Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this edition of the AI Africa Report. We wish you many blessings and good health for the new year ahead. It's our first edition for this year, 2021. Last year was a little bit uncertain, unsure, like our times are right now, as we live through the coronavirus and the COVID pandemic. And from our team, we wish you all the very best, and we hope you are doing safe and well. We've heard of many deaths, and while it has shaken us, we continue to power on and do the best work we can possible. So to kick off this year with the AI Africa Report, we're looking particularly to talk to companies and individuals who are involved in the fight against COVID-19 using tech as a ground runner and a front runner. And one of those people that we've been able to find today is Mohammed Simji. So let me tell you a little bit about him before we get him onto screen. Mohammed is a software engineer with a master's in technology management from the University of Pretoria. And he said to us that he ditched a career as a management consultant at McKinsey & Company to follow his heart and founded A2D24, a tech firm that focuses on providing solutions to the world's most pressing challenges. And I'd like to welcome Mohammed into the studio. Mohammed, good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for accepting an invite to be on the AI Africa Report.
Walaikum salam. Thanks for having us.
This is great to talk to you. I know your company and your team have been involved in a number of COVID-19 initiatives that look at addressing, tracing, as well as understanding how coronavirus is playing an impact around people communicating, particularly in the workplace. But I'm going to let you talk more about that and enlighten our audience here at the AI Africa Report. I think to kick off our conversation, Mohammed, give us a short introduction into the business of A2D24.
No, cool. It's not from Star Wars, by the way. Most people think that actually the name comes from a chip we used to program at university called a A2D converter that converts analog signals to digital. And that's kind of how we became A2D24. So it's like going from analog to digital fast, or analog to digital in 24 hours. That was kind of the reason for the name. But kind of what's A2D24? You know, we like to think of ourselves as a digital laboratory, a place where we, dream up cool ideas and get to build it. As a team, we are, I think we all get immense satisfaction from seeing an idea and taking an idea from, ideation all the way to see it like actually in use and benefiting people. And that's what excites us. And that's what we get to do, every day is solve, complex, interesting problems using tech. Kind of over the past 5 years, we've managed to kind of, build a speciality in healthcare. And that's about where we spend about 80% of our time is building software for healthcare.
Do you think that came about purely because of the pandemic hitting and you identified this particular gap in the market and thought we'd be perfectly positioned to build those type of things? Or was it a natural inclination towards doing work around coronavirus tracing, contact tracing, and understanding how people communicate?
No, I think definitely a lot of the work in the past year has been heavily driven, by the coronavirus and the impacts it's had on businesses. And really, we've been responding to this kind of demand. Our, prior work in healthcare has always been about, patient records and improving, reducing patient waiting times in healthcare facilities. We've definitely seen a pivot towards much more acute, direct type of systems, which are particularly addressing new needs which have come about as a result of the coronavirus.
This is very interesting that you talk about it, because I'd like now to introduce our audience to some of the work that your company has done around the particular pandemic. Describe, Mohammed, for us, because I won't describe it in as much, do much justice to it as you will. Some of the initiatives that your company has developed in assisting and managing coronavirus infections and tracing.
Yeah, it actually, I don't know if it's like a coronavirus blur or it's just the, franticness of the past year, but we built something like 16 coronavirus-related systems in about 8 months. We've never ever, delivered that much software ever, and I think it's testament to like the amazing effort of the team and just the commitment to try and solve some of these things. But some of the kind of ones that stand out for me, I think there's three that I'll maybe just mention quickly. I think one of the most interesting was quite early on in the at the end of lockdown, level 5. We helped a mine, Goldfield South Deep, which is one of the deepest mines in the world. They needed to return about 3,000 of their employees safely to work, and they had about 48 hours to do this. And so I thought that that was for me that was pretty interesting problem. How do you find out which staff members are healthy, who are not symptomatic? How do you arrange the travel permits for them and then schedule them for the required shift? And we were able to kind of automate this entire process. I think we started Friday 11 a.m. and we were live the next Saturday afternoon. And what the system does is actually contacts each of the employees automatically, over WhatsApp, checks if they're healthy, checks if they're actually, ready to return to work. If they are, finds them the relevant shift or the schedules them for the shift that they need to attend, and then issues them the relevant travel documents. You can imagine like trying to do this manually, 3,000 employees, them, scheduling them. And I think that's pretty cool that you help this mine return the staff to work, which I think is important that they return the staff to work for economic reasons, but also for safety, to make sure that when they do return to work, we kind of limiting any kind of COVID transmission. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Sure.
In kind of healthcare more directly, our kind of biggest system by far, from like a scale perspective, is that we built a system at Netcare that screens every single person for COVID when they enter a Netcare facility. And I looked at the stats. We've done about 7.5 million of these, COVID screenings, just from like a, volume perspective. And it's one thing to kind of, build a system that has 3,000 interactions on it, but building a system that handles 7 million interactions and patient records. That's pretty cool. And I think there was a lot of effort and energy that we put into that to really make that as simple, streamlined, and easy to use. Everything from reverse billing the data to making it work on 98% of mobile devices, just to make sure it's like super accessible to people. I thought that was the second one that stood out for me, and the third was really one of these offshoots of the coronavirus. We saw a massive uptake in telehealth. The system that we put together has now got about 3,000 doctors on it, and we've seen this massive behavior shift in people wanting to do virtual consults as opposed to in-person consults. And that's one of these things that I was mentioning that has definitely been impacted by COVID.
Mohammed, thanks for taking us through the different initiatives that the company has been involved with or has driven. I would like to spend quite a lot of time, which we don't have today, on understanding data concerns and the understanding around data privacy around that. But I think the next question follows quite nicely into it. When you talk about the number of users you have, do you think that the general public trust AI-enabled health systems enough? And why do you think that?
Yeah. From what I've seen with like interactions with end users, patients, and healthcare providers, I think that there is a general sense that, especially in particular in healthcare, when there is the potential for something to make your life easier and improve your quality of life, people are much more willing to try something new, to adopt something new, and to be kind of more willing to try something out, as opposed to something that maybe makes more money or has other types of benefits. When it comes to healthcare, for people who are in need, and something that offers some kind of improvement in their quality of lifestyle, I found them much more willing to try out something.
This, of course, makes me wonder, though. Before I want to explore the next question is: are people aware enough about data concerns or data privacy around their own data, be it healthcare or just general data that they're sharing on social media platforms and the like, from your perspective?
I think in general, people are typically, I'd say not they are typically not concerned. I think this level of concern is growing, especially in in healthcare where kind of like digitization, from my perspective, is typically lagging other industries. And as this kind of happens, so too do the types of data leaks and data breaches that we start to see slowly happening. So I think you probably are right. I think for most people, at this time when they are getting healthcare, they are just like, get me fixed. I need to get better. I'm not well, and I will tick whatever box and sign whatever I need to sign because I really need to get better. And that I think hasn't been a major issue, just because there's historically there's been very limited digitization of healthcare data. I think as this trend moves towards more digital, what's going to happen is I assume people will start to recognize these the risks of this, and I think as also the general information about it becomes more available, people will become more concerned.
I think in part you've answered some of our next question, which is what should citizens understand about healthcare and tech to make their lives better? Because here at Socially Acceptable, which is the company that the AI Africa report is the flagship project for Socially Acceptable, our mandate is building responsible digital citizenry. And that essentially points to creating a citizenry that understands what their data is doing for them, in whose hands does it lie, who owns it, and what kind of decisions are made around that. It's what do they say? Data is the new currency, like oil is a currency. So in answering that particular question, and I know we can explore this in further conversations in next episodes, but what do you think citizens should understand about healthcare and tech together to help them enable a better life?
Yeah, no, look, I completely agree with you that it's up to all of us to be responsible, to understand the risks, and to take some kind of responsibility for it. And I also agree with you that there's, education is a major element of it. I think the most important thing for me, kind of being on the side of the table of the people who actually, put the data together and are responsible for protecting it, is that the social pressure of the bad use of data, or the kind of improper use of data or improper data handling, that is, I think, ultimately the best protection for citizens. If you're kind of like pressure that I can tell you in our company, we feel immense pressure and responsibility to take care of this data, because we understand the social backlash of something happening. In fact, for us, it would shut us down as a company, and it would end our livelihoods. And I think that's actually very important, that the public continues to, place this kind of social pressure and responsibility, including kind of economic and legal, pressure on the kind of users or, handlers of the data, which we are mechanism that ensures that ensures the right type of culture and responsibility with the people who actually, like us, who are responsible for managing and maintaining the data.
I think this is a good lead point into what I'd really love to speak about right now, because at Socially Acceptable, we are all about AI ethics. I'm pleased to tell our viewers also that in coming episodes, as we speak to Mohammed and many colleagues, individuals, thought leaders and innovators like him in the industry, and women who are involved in the industry as well, across the African continent, we will be having a very key focus on AI ethics, primarily also because we are working closely with the World Economic Forum on solidifying what AI ethics means in this country and on this continent. So in that particular train of thought, Mohammed, from your perspective and the work that your company has done to date using AI as a developing technology, what does AI ethics mean to you and the team?
Yeah, I think, for me, it means two things. One is ensuring that there is from whatever we are using this very powerful technology for, that there is a net benefit to society. I think that's number one. And number two is that whatever downsides they are, that these kind of, call it downside risks, are something that are actively managed, recorded, and tracked. And I think if we can make those two things work, make sure that there's always a net benefit, and make sure that the kind of negatives are always really, actively managed and recorded and tracked, I feel that is what will allow us to get the best out of this, potential from the technology.
That is interesting to note as a starting point for a conversation. Do you feel and do you believe that enough is being done? Let's look at it in a few parts. Enough is being done in terms of regulation, because that is always being said that it's on the back foot in keeping up with how rapidly technology is evolving, including the processing power available to us. So how would you speak to regulation getting up to speed with also keeping up with tech and therefore ensuring the safety of its users?
Yeah. Look, I think you're right. Regulation, across all industries typically lags, is a kind of, a lagging indicator, or lags behind the need. For me, kind of like personally, what I've seen, as a, in kind of like the corporate world, and what I see in our own companies, really the kind of, biggest driver of behavior is culture. Creating what's even, for me, the regulation is what you fall on when the culture fails. But ultimately, the thing that will actually protect us is trying to kind of create this kind the society-based culture, which is drives the right type of behavior. The analogy I can maybe create is corruption or any kind of like theft is it's completely illegal, right? There is lots of regulations and framework and jail time penalties, yet it still occurs. The thing that really stops it from occurring is when when there's some kind of like social pressure, when it's become socially acceptable to do something, and when society places pressure on individuals and organizations to stop doing it. That acts in a far more better, as a far, my own views, that has a far greater impact than regulation does. Regulation is almost like the fallback.
So there's been a lot of movement with AI ethics development research in Europe, particularly in Europe, the US, the UK, and the Far East. China being one of the, I would say, economies that want to lead in the AI arms race, particularly. Would it be, according to your understanding, and I'm just throwing this question out at you, just in a form of a conversation, but how much of the regulatory frameworks can we adopt from other countries, in particular for our country as well as the continent, considering that we have very different challenges and the kind of, as you use the correct word, culture and the way we understand the world, our world reference?
I'm pretty certain that from all of these examples that you've mentioned, there's definitely components of these legislation that we could learn from, that we could see what has worked, what has not worked, and what the kind of benefits or impacts to society of implementing them. But you're correct, there are differences in the way we implement it, we use it, as well as I kind of call it our maturity along this value chain of implementing AI. And there would definitely need to be some, customizations to meet our own requirement. But guaranteed, there's a lot that we can learn, and definitely kind of leapfrog our own process by looking at what others have done.
Makes sense. It's the common thread of conversation also with AI ethicists right now in the industry, as well as other AI developers, innovators, and thought leaders. I think to wrap up, because we can talk so much more on different aspects like data privacy, the kind of infrastructure you use, whether data sets are readily available for this particular market. But we'll leave that for another conversation as we are heading towards the end of our interview. Do you think, Mohammed, to wrap up and with the kind of work you're doing, as I say again, I'm referring back to the work A2D24. Have I got that right? A2D24. Brilliant. Do you think enough is being done on this continent, in this country, from your perspective and the work that you're doing, around understanding AI ethics and the way AI can have a more positive impact on people? Is enough being done or spoken about?
Yeah. Look, I think there's a lot of great work that's happening. I think there's definitely potential. There's potential for more. I think personally, the thing that I'm, myself and our team are most excited about is how can we use the technology to really kind of, solve problems that are, call it very specific to our needs, and things that that would, typically not being able to, get done. And for me, there's always more opportunity to do that. There's always more space to do that. You're definitely correct that, in our quest to solve problems and help people, we've got to make sure that that we aren't doing any kind of negative or harm, and whatever we're doing has this, benefit to society. And so the two go together. Let's say that, the part that we are obviously most excited about are trying to find, really interesting, problems that we can solve using this powerful tool.
Well, to wrap up what's been a rather interesting introductory interview, what are your final words to our viewers in this time that we're living in, Mohammed? People are shaken by the number of deaths they hear daily. You're working in the direct line of trying to assist people in understanding how to communicate in the time of COVID-19. What are some words of advice or comfort you can share with viewers as they go through this time?
Yeah. It's a tough one. In some ways, I feel like we are living through this almost like a kind of like a scenario from the movies. This is like, the asteroid is about to hit the Earth situation that you would watch a movie about. And I feel it's something that in 10 years' time we definitely reflect on and remember this over here. My own kind of personal approach and the approach that we have in the company is an abundance of caution. There is a lot of unknown. There's a lot of information and early research that's going on. But our approach is that if we can be extra cautious, there is no real downside risk. Yes, there are kind of like short-term implications. It does impact our immediate quality of life, our kind of social interactions. But I think over a kind of longer-term perspective, I think skipping certain activities that or engagements that we typically normally do. I think in the long term we would probably say what was I doing, what was I thinking about, and so kind of that's been our approach. And even in our own family, my own household, that is kind of the approach that we have taken. And we can only hope that this is like if we put our best foot forward and try our best to take care of our health, the health of our loved ones and those in the society in which we live in, that they can be no real negative impacts to having that intention, and B trying to act out and live our lives in that way.
Well said, and thank you for your time today, Mohammed. It was wonderful to have you on the AI Africa Report to talk more about the work that you and the team at A2D24 are doing. We wish you all the very best, and in your work around assisting everyone understand how tech can work effectively to combat COVID-19. All the very best, and we hope to see you back on the AI Africa Report.
Cool, thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Well, that was another wonderful interview that we've had for this week. It was the first one for 2021 as we kick off understanding and talking to thought leaders, innovators, and thinkers across South Africa as well as the African continent. Previous episodes, we've spoken to mostly South African innovators, but that's set to change this year as we live up to our mandate of being the most comprehensive portal of knowledge and research on AI and AI ethics on the African continent. And we will be sure to bring you more interesting interviews coming up. Next week, we've got Natalie Rappel. She is the Women in AI South Africa ambassador, as well as an AI consultant at EY Consulting. I'm very excited as she will be the second woman in AI that we interview on the AI Africa Report, and we need to do so much more of it. Previous interviewees have all been male, and one robot who I think is a guy, because he did say that he would tell me afterwards if he was single. So that was pretty cool. Want to check out more episodes of previous interviews that we've done with other innovators and thought leaders in the African continent? Head over to YouTube and check out the AI Africa Report, and you'll be sure to find more interesting thoughts there. Until we see you next week, take care.